Welcome to our weekly leadership conversation. This is a program that brings together industry experts to share their insights about tools and enablers to leaders with the aim of empowering them to become the best versions of themselves. This program is sponsored by the Leadership Group and powered by the Martin Oduor Otieno Leadership Academy, or the MULA. I am your host, Obare Nyaega. This week, our conversation is on culture. To share the insights with us is Debbie Hollis. Debbie specializes on culture transformation, strategic change, and leadership development. She has worked with Deloitte Consulting for 20 years in multiple markets across Africa. Debbie is currently an associate with the Leadership Group for the last 3 years. Debbie, karibu to the show.
Asante sana, it's very good to be with you today. Thank you.
All right. So we need to begin off by demystifying organizational culture. It's a term that gains out of prominence. Your expertise has been in the industry for 20 years in this culture transformation. So when you think about organizational culture, what is that animal, and maybe does it even matter for organizations?
Thank you very much. It's a good way to start, Obara. I think organizational culture is really just about our values and beliefs that we hold within an organization and how they get demonstrated in patterns of behavior in an organization. So essentially, simply put, it's the way we do things around here. And it matters a great deal, because how we actually do our jobs can either be a source of real competitive differentiation, competitive advantage, or if we don't do it so well, it can become a real source of derailing and an Achilles heel for us. So very important. From a commercial perspective, culture has also been shown to be a real driver of business value. Research shows to us that it can actually account for performance differentials of over 50%. So very well worth looking at your culture, not only in terms of creating a more compelling place for people to work in, but also it makes good business sense too.
All right. You've mentioned issues around business and business survive on strategy, but you also hear this common saying that culture is strategy for breakfast. So is there something like a right culture that will then shape that strategy, that will make the strategy not be eaten for breakfast, as it were?
Yes, I think that phrase has been so well used out there that people are all very familiar with it. In essence, when you talk about culture, there isn't really a right or wrong culture as such. What's more, the real litmus test for a culture is the degree to which your culture actually supports the execution of your business strategy. So to what degree are the behaviors that are demonstrated in the organization aligned to help you to translate your strategy into results? Where it helps you to do that, you know you have a healthy, constructive culture in place. Where it becomes problematic is if that culture does not work for you in terms of supporting strategy execution. That's when you really need to be able to revisit it. Mm-hmm.
You've used the term of alignment, so I assume there's something like culture alignment. So if you think about that culture alignment, therefore, and somebody wants perhaps to implement it or to try and align the business with the behaviors and everything, how will a journey of culture alignment then be?
Okay. Essentially, what you could do is look at it as a process that at a high level, so just taking a balcony view, that really involves 3 key steps. Mm-hmm. So just like when you are looking to establish your business strategy, you start off with your vision. Culture is exactly the same, in the sense that you would start off by creating a clear view of what is your culture ambition. What is the vision that you want to be able to deliver against in order to make sure it supports what you're trying to achieve from a business perspective? Because that's a strategic conversation, that culture visioning is typically something that you would start with the executive team to be able to really map out what that ideal picture looks like, so that you are then able to have a North Star, if you will, to guide your culture transformation efforts. Once you're clear on where it is that you want to go, you're ready for the second step, which is really about understanding where are you at right now. So in terms of this step, it would be around carrying out a culture diagnostic to be able to just sort of get a reading, if you will, in terms of how people are currently experiencing the culture and to what degree it actually differs from the desired future state in terms of that vision. Typically, in addition to doing a culture survey diagnostic, you would also complement that with culture focus group discussions. It's really important that culture is not just a top-down thing. It needs to be a process that's inclusive. So running focus groups with your staff helps you to get further data-driven insights in terms of not only how people are experiencing it, but what they would like to see being done differently, so that they're really part of that process. The advantage is then that you have both the qualitative as well as quantitative data points that you can bring together to really be able to paint the picture of what your current culture is being experienced as, the lived experience, and what needs to be done in terms of the gaps to get to your ideal. Once you've got that picture, you're ready for the third phase. And that is essentially, once again, looking at how do we close those gaps? So working together with the leadership team to ideate around what are some of those culture levers we can pull or initiatives that we can put into place within the organization that will allow us to be able to move the needle in terms of getting to our desired culture. We would typically work with operational level leaders to be able to ideate around these actions and then literally have it validated by the executives, so that you've then got a roadmap that effectively helps you to take your culture strategy, your culture vision, and be able to translate that into results back in the workplace. So that's how you would really approach it, that whole alignment journey. What it would look like is essentially, at a high level, those three steps. Decide on your culture vision, carry out your culture diagnostic to understand where you are and where your gaps are in order to achieve that vision, and then map your implementation roadmap so that you can guide those culture alignment activities.
Right. That sounds a bit complex, but also culture can be very fluid, if I may. And that means that you spoke about data, for example. So is there a way you can be able to measure this progress that you're talking about of the whole culture alignment progress, as it were, in an organization?
That question of measurement, and also just your observation that culture is very fluid, are so important to really focus in on, particularly because culture is an organic thing. It's never one and done. It's shaped by the strategy that we need to be able to deliver on. And in essence, measuring our progress. How are we doing? Are we actually making progress towards our culture goals is really, really critical to make sure that you can maintain momentum, because it really is a journey. So essentially, when it comes to the key performance indicators that you would use, the metrics to measure culture, they are really typically tied very specifically to the initiatives that you ideate around and that you want to implement. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. So just to give a practical example, in your strategy, you might look to really drive a stronger collaboration. So one of those metrics could be measuring to what degree, for example, there are cross-selling opportunities that are being leveraged within the organization. That can be reflected in an increase in product sales or the uptake of solutions that your organization actually offers. Alternatively, it could also be something that is centered more on to what degree are you driving customer centricity. Typical KPI would be set around your customer service index for that. Your employee engagement scores, your net promoter scores in terms of how the market is experiencing you, your employees are experiencing you, are also measures and metrics that are often used within an organization. And of course, the advantage of also running with your culture diagnostic is you create a baseline with that diagnostic tool as well. So then you've got your culture index that you can measure year on year as well, to be able to see to what degree do you perhaps need to course correct, because that's also in the true spirit of Agile. We want to be able to see what can we do to make improvements, and it's accepting that things are not always going to happen in a straight line. You know, there's going to be a need to course correct. So we need to be monitoring how we're doing in order to be able to do that. So the metrics are a really important part of the culture transformation journey.
Right. You mentioned many metrics, and also we appreciate that also organizations are very complex in terms of their structures. You have very many people running, be it the board, management. What role will all this leadership play to ensure that all this alignment happens and we're able to achieve the progress you're talking about, and of course eventually get into the strategic, achieving our strategy, as it were?
I think the key player in the mix, so to speak, is very definitely your leadership team. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, if you do not have a leadership team that are aligned in terms of the importance and the business case for culture, and specifically why you should even embark on a culture transformation journey, then it's probably best not to embark on it, because ultimately you will succeed or fail based on the level of leadership support that you have. People will always look to their leadership to understand what's important around here, what's really important around here. They will pay attention to what leadership pays attention to. Where are the resources being allocated in the organization? Mm-hmm. What is important to the leadership team? What are they really rewarding and punishing in terms of behaviors? What do they really invest their time and energy in? That sends a very powerful message out to people in terms of what really matters. So we need to make sure that there is real commitment, not just lip service, but real commitment in terms of walking the talk that culture is a business priority.
Right. So do these leaders require any support?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because ultimately, while they are providing that leadership, they of course need to have strong support and sponsorship also from the board. And of course, when it comes to capability building, it's also important not to assume that leadership are equipped to carry out that role. Leading change is a skill in itself. So it's important to also build in the opportunity to equip leaders so that they are able to really play their role in driving the culture transformation process.
Right. So let me ask you the final question based on your experience and your research. If you think about one key success factor in terms of the culture alignment journey, what will that success factor be like?
Okay. I think definitely for me, the most important thing would be around managing stakeholder expectations. It's really, really key. There's a lot of misapprehension out there in terms of what it actually takes to drive a culture transformation journey. And perhaps just that appreciation that it really is a journey and not an event is itself a starting point. If we just draw an analogy between developing a business strategy and this culture journey that we've spoken about today in terms of ideating around what is our North Star in terms of our culture ambition, our vision, doing the diagnostic, understanding what the gaps are, and then mapping out our strategy and our implementation roadmap on how we'll get there. Typically, that is a 3 to 4 month project in itself. When you're looking to develop a business strategy, the typical project life cycle is also around 3 to 4 months. Now, when people develop a business strategy, there would be no expectation, not from a board level or leader level or even an employee level, to immediately see benefits realization at the end of that 4-month project cycle. But yet it's not unusual when it comes to a culture transformation journey for a board member, a member of the leadership team, or even employees to expect that at the end of that 3 to 4 month journey, the changes that you are expecting to see in terms of culture will become immediately apparent. That behavior will then, once the culture narrative has been socialized, people will change instantly. Appreciating that we need to give it time, that is effectively only the start of the journey. When we socialize what that culture ambition is, the narrative, and how we're going to get there in terms of our implementation roadmap, that is just the beginning. Then the real work starts, just in terms of helping people within the organization to build their comfort level in terms of adopting those behaviors you want to see, to really be able to shift culture so that it actually aligns and supports the execution of the business strategy.
Right. Thank you very much. So perhaps you can give your final words to the viewers so that we close this discussion today.
Okay, Obara, thank you very much for extending the invitation for me to join you today. I think really for me, just appreciating the opportunity to connect and really just encouraging our audience, if you have any questions or if you are also looking to explore a culture transformation journey and would like to continue the conversation, I really just want to encourage you to reach out to the leadership group. We'd love to carry on the conversation. Thank you.
Debbie Hollis speaking about culture this particular morning. That was the weekly leadership conversation brought to you courtesy of the leadership group and powered by Martin Oduor Otieno Leadership Academy. I am your host, Obare. Until next week, thank you for viewing. Thanks for listening. See you.